Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How is everyone doing today? Whoopsies. Let's get this straight. And we are ready to begin. Okay, Baruch Hashem. So we had a slight technical difficulty because I was trying to change the settings of our nightly class to be on a Zoom stream that would go on one computer, but it didn't work. It's okay. So we're using two computers screens in front of me, as we've done for the last few nights. And I'm looking forward to an amazing class together with all of you. Make this more straight. And there we go. Perfect. Okay. Tonight's class is going to hopefully, very real, very relevant, very important, and perhaps even amazing and life-changing in the way you view the Seder story. We're going through the Seder process. Very, very important because most of you that are watching will be in your own Seders this year. And so it's important for you to know exactly what it is you need to do every step of the way. We've discussed the Kiddush. We've discussed the washing of the hands and the dipping of the vegetable in the salt water, which we discussed at great length yesterday. And we briefly mentioned and we talked about the breaking of matzah. What I want to get to today is of the two most important things that are done at our Seder. What are the two most important things that need to be done by the Seder? Number one is eating the matzah, the handmade shmura matzah. I got finally our matzah here. I opened it up to make sure it looks good. Do not have handmade shmura matzah for the Seder. Please come and I will give you some as a gift to make sure that you have. One is eating the matzah. The second, absolutely critical, important mitzvah to do on the Seder night, it's simple, get ready. Saying hello to me, how are you all doing? It is great to see you. Sarah, you are correct. The mitzvah, a biblical obligation that we have, more important than minor eating the maror, is if higadita levincha. You should tell a story to your children. This telling a story to your children is so important. It is so critical that it is, every single night of the year, every day we do it. When we say the Shema, right, in the third paragraph of the Shema, we clearly mention the Exodus from Egypt. And we talk about the idea of Egypt, etc. But the most prominent, where it's the primary day of the year when we're obligated to not only remember the Exodus from Egypt, but to share that story, to inculcate that story into the next generation, to our children, is specifically tonight, the night of the Seder day. If you were to ask the educated American, I'm not talking about the average American that doesn't know who the president of the United States is and know what the difference is between the Senate and the Congress. If you ask an educated American, and you ask them, what was the first ship to come to America? They may know it was a Mayflower. If you ask them what day did the Mayflower set, what day is Christopher's birthday? We asked them what day he passed away. We asked them what food did the Pilgrims eat on the Mayflower? What day did the Mayflower arrive in America? Chances are that even the educated American will have no clue the answer to these questions. But if you ask the average Jew, especially the average educated Jew, you say, tell me, what day did the Jewish people in Egypt? They can tell you it was the 15th day of the month of Nisan. Ask them what did they eat when they were leaving, they'll tell you they ate the matzah. If you ask them what day of the week was it when they left, they'll tell you that it was Shabbos, it was Thursday, they received the Torah on Shabbos, etc., etc. The average educated Jew knows a tremendous amount of the details of the story of Exodus from Egypt. And why is that? Because in American culture, there is no time, there is no set moment where the parents teach their children about what it means that they live in America, what it means to live in the land of the free and the home of the brave. So yes, we have July 4th. Yes, we have a day when we're not working, where we have barbecues, where we have the bonfire, where we have fireworks. But to share the story, to make it real to our children, that they should understand what it means to be living through the story of the exit of Egypt, that that we don't in America. Whereas in the Jewish community, in a Jewish home, the idea of getting together to sit together on Pesach and to share a story and to sit together and to teach your children about the beginning of our nation and what it means to be a Jew, this is what happens on Pesach. This is so important. This is so critical. The story of the Jewish people that there's no way to explain how important this part of the Seder is. It's less ritualistic. It's much more open to creativity, being able to not just read the book, the words of the prayer or of the Haggadah, but to be able to actually tell a story. Every day, which I still hope, I dream, I pray, I wish to God that we will still have that moment this year to have that community Seder. Every year at our community Seder, I share the following rule. The Seder is not a night of prayers. We're not reading a prayer book. We're telling a story. This Haggadah that I use in the shul, or whatever Haggadah it is, and I should give a Maxwell Haggadah off the shelf too. I have those too. I would have thought of it. I'm not going to get up now, but the Maxwell Haggadah, the whatever Haggadah, you can have an ancient Haggadah. This Haggadah was printed in Palestine. Someone brought it to the office recently. You open it up and you look in the pages. It is actually, if you can see it, it says printed in, you see it on the thing, or you can see it, in Palestine. You can see printed in Palestine. This is printed before there was even the land of Israel. And if you look at any single structure, that's only the structure to help us make sure to not miss some of the important details. But the critical aspect of the Seder experience when you're sitting at a table with your family is to engage them, to inspire them, to interest them, to make them curious, to make them excited, make them eager to know more about what does it mean to be of the 15 steps called Magid, telling a story, which will be good for any introduction to the step, but it's going to be especially true for what I'm going to talk about tonight. So we're going to spend several nights Magid on the telling of the story, because there's many aspects to the story. There's the 4 things and the 4 questions. We'll talk about that tomorrow night. Bezrat Hashem, I hope you'll join us 7:30 tomorrow night. We'll talk about the 4 questions and how it relates to 4 different, it's really 4 answers. We're going to get to that. Today we're going to talk about the introduction to the Magid. So there's 15 steps, right? Kadesh is number 1, Urchatz is number 2, Karpas is number 3, Yachas number 4. I'll read it in the Haggadah. The reason why I tried using Zoom is because I wanted to have some so I'll make sure we're clear. So here's 15 steps. You have Kadesh, Karpas, Yachas, it's backwards, Magid, the time of the story. And I must tell you, before we even get to what is the opening important, anyone that knows how to tell knows that a story is not just about telling over the information. You got to create the setting for it. You create the framework for it. Of the objective of the Seder night. Good evening, everyone. The objective of the Seder night is to make the story important. Besides that, in Judaism, we have a rule that the beginning of something is always the epitome of the. You have the name of something with the name of a person, with the name of a parsha. You find this in many ways, that the name, back for YouTube, the name of something or the introduction, the beginning of something, the first version of the entire of what we're going to read. So the opening of the Magid, the message I want to get across. And anyone knows, to all those that are watching me and saying good evening to me on Facebook, to Bruce, to Terry, to Lisa, Andy, I actually saw a headline today, YouTube. I apologize about the quality of the video. There's really, do the best that we, if I see that it's breaking, fine, repeat or ask me. What we've said so far is that the most important part of Seder experience is the telling of the story to your child. The primary bulk of the evening is spent in this step of the telling of the story, what we call Magid. So this is so Magid story. If this is what ensures the continuation of Gizam, the story. If this, so how do we begin the formal telling of the? You open up the Haggadah, and pull it off the shelf, and you turn past where it says Kiddush, turn the page past where it says washing your hands, and past where it says the blessing on dipping the fruit. It says Magid. You can't get it. Telling the story. There's an instruction to open up the cup, the matzah, so that you can see the matzah in front of you, and you lift up the tray, say the following words. And I apologize, I don't have it in text in front of you. I tried putting a common lesson that didn't really work. I'll read it, I'll translate, and I'll make sure we're clear. Hey lachma anya, this is the bread of affliction. The achlu avasana that our food ate out of the Mitzrayim in the land of Egypt. Dichfin yesei v'yechel. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Ditzrich yesei v'yifsach. Whoever is in need, come and conduct the Seder of Pesach. Be in the land of Egypt. Hashta Avdin, now we are slaves. Next year we will be people. Back to the comments. But the point is that we have the introduction. Here is text. This is the affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him come and conduct the Seder. This year we are here, next year the land of Israel. This year we are slaves, we will be free people. Now, I don't know how to raise a hand, as I'm not having a crowd watching in front of me, but this paragraph, it would be good to know who's familiar with this paragraph. Explain to me, please, how this is the beginning of our story of the telling of the Exodus. There's three parts to this paragraph. Related, unconnected, random parts. Part number one, we open the matzah, we're holding the Seder plate, and we say, this is the bread of affliction that our fathers ate in the land of Egypt. Think about the matzah. How do we say, well, let me ask you a question. A true statement that our forefathers eat matzah in Egypt. We're eating the matzah on Pesach. If you remember, later on, we discussed this a few nights ago. When we eat the matzah, before we eat the, if you skip a few pages, if I was doing a class in person, you had at home and you can take out a Haggadah and follow this, you'll appreciate this more. So I'm going to suggest if you're at home and you have a Haggadah, take it, and you're going to see that later on before matzah, we say, this matzah that we are about to eat, our fathers did not have time to become leavened, king of all kings, be he to them and redeem. Thus it is said, the dough that they baked They baked from the matzahs from the dough they had brought out of Egypt because it did not have a chance to rise, because they had been driven out of Egypt and could not delay, and they took no options. So the first statement is about eating the matzah in Egypt when we were slaves, which is not true, even though there's some that explain that, yes, we did eat slaves because matzah is a good food for to eat because it's very, very for it to be baked. But on a very simplistic level, we don't find anywhere the reason why the Jews ate it in Egypt as slaves. We find the reason matzah because after the Jews left Egypt. So it's an invitation. It's not telling the story. You're inviting people to your meal. Now, if you know anything about inviting people, you got to invite them before it starts. How do you invite? On the night of Pesach, to invite someone to your meal, you're a little bit late. It can still be done. Someone who has no arrangements, who wasn't planning on going to Seder, you can still do it. But you got to do it when you're still in the synagogue, when people are still open to be invited. You say, by the way, I'm a very generous person. Whoever is hungry, come and eat. Whoever is in need, let him enjoy my Pesach Seder. They say, Yashir Koyach, thank you very much for the invitation. You know, there's ways of inviting someone in a way that you don't get stuck by actually inviting them. Like you invite them, you know, I don't know if you would come, but just in case you're bored and you have nothing to do, you know, you're welcome to come to my house. Oh, and by the way, I have coronavirus, but you still invite now. You know, there's ways of inviting someone, but maybe they get the hint that they're not really welcome. So why are we inviting people after we're already sitting at home? We already invited people. We're already after kids. And now we're inviting people to our home. Doesn't make any sense. I'll ask you a third question. Next line, the third line. This year, we are here. Next year in the land of Israel. This year, we are slaves. Next year, we will be free people. Doesn't make any sense. What's the introduction to your Seder? We're slaves. You're in Israel. Aren't we talking about our exodus? Now, once upon a time, the Jews were slaves, but now, thank God, God came and God redeemed us and God took us out of Egypt. So now, Baruch Hashem, we're no longer slaves. Now we're free people. Instead, what are we saying? This year we are slaves. Next year we'll be free people. So let's understand this. Again, the reason why I have this Haggadah here is because if you open up any Haggadah, any print, this Haggadah 40s, same thing. If you can inside, after you make Kiddush, if you have the Kiddush, when you turn the Kiddush, and the next paragraph is, Hey, lach ma'an, this is poor man's bread. Ach, the son that our forefathers in Egypt, if you can read the English, it's a little. Whoever is hungry, you're invited. Whoever is needy, come and eat. Now, hashtahacha, we're slaves. Next year, we'll be free people. And this is true in every single Haggadah. This is the beginning. Hey, lachman yadiach lavasana. But after Kiddush, after the steps, only afterwards comes the Manishtana. In every Haggadah in the world. So why are we starting our Seder with a story that, first of all, seems very, very negative, saying that we're actually slaves, we're actually still in exile? It goes against the theme of freedom and of Exodus and the whole point of what we're doing. And ask you a strong, I don't want to spend a lot of time on questions, but when our forefathers ate in Egypt, to them, was the matzah a bread of affliction? Or to them was the matzah bread of hope? Think about that for a second. When our forefathers are sitting and having their Pesach Seder right before they're going to be redeemed, I spoke to someone today, family, and he has many siblings that every year he gets together for the Pesach Seder. And this year he's not able to get together. And he's very, very sad that all of his guests, 35 people on this table, and this year is just a handful of people. We're talking about the importance of family. So I shared with him about what we talked about a few nights ago about being quarantined at home, and you're on his own. And he tells me that they were sitting and waiting for the Exodus. So when they were sitting and waiting for the Exodus and eating the matzah, to them, is this matzah bread of affliction? Or to them, is this matzah bread of hope? And the answer is going to be bread of hope. To them, the answer is going to be bread of hope. I'm sorry about the video breaking up. I don't know what to do. One of the many challenges of our times. So, bread of hope. So if when the Jews are sitting down, they're eating bread of hope, bread of redemption, so why are we making the matzah negative? Why are we making it negative? So one more thing, and I'm going to go to explanations. You know what? Let's leave the question. Let's go to the next paragraph. The next paragraph, God is Manashtana. We ask 4 questions. We're going to talk about that God willing tomorrow night. After the 4 said that we were slaves, I'm going to read it and hopefully follow along. Avadim leFaro b'Mitzrayim. We were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. Vayotzienu Hashem Elokeinu, and then God, our God, took us out from there. Biyad chazaka, with a strong hand. Ubezroa nitur, an outstretched arm. Listen to the next words. And if the Holy One to be He had not taken our fathers out of Egypt, then Hare Anu, then we, Ubaneinu, our children, Ubnei Baneinu, and our great grandchildren, and all generations down, we would have remained as slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt. And therefore, even for all wise and all of understanding, knowing the Torah, we would still be obligated to stay over the exile of Egypt. Whoever increased spelling over the story of the Exodus of Egypt, this is praiseworthy. And then to bring across the idea of how praiseworthy is a person that spends many, many hours describing in great detail the Exodus. So the Haggadah tells us the story of the 5 rabbis who were sitting all night speaking about the Exodus of Egypt until the students came and said, "It is over, it's already morning, it's time to say the morning prayers." So let me understand, please help me on which we were sitting. We could interact and we could be on the same page. Explain to me, please, what is this paragraph saying? What is this saying? I'm sorry, everyone's losing the voice. What are we saying in this paragraph? We're saying that we were slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt, and then God took us out with a hand, and if God had not redeemed us, then we would have still, till today, we still would have been slaves to Pharaoh in Egypt in the past, and today we are free. The words avodim mean that we. You can maybe say it doesn't mean us, literally us. It means our great-great-great-grandfathers were slaves. And so too when we say Vayotzienu Hashem, we're looking at God took us out of Egypt. It doesn't mean us in the literal sense, us. It means our great-great-grandfathers. However, the next words imply that so let's understand what's going on. The Avayinu, that we were slaves. However, we're not talking in the past, we're saying that we are slaves. There's more questions, but I'm going to leave the question. I'm going to go straight to beautiful life. The answer of the Rebbe that's really relevant to us in our lives. Go straight to the answer. Your child comes to this Pesach Seder. especially if it's in the year 2020 and your child is quarantined and your family's quarantined, and the child normally has his bubby and Zaidi by the table, and friends by the table, and guests by the table, and there's a hustle and bustle for Pesach here. It's like, what's the burning question on your child's mind? Dear father, we lost connection on you. My dear father, the child says, you want me to celebrate a story that happened 3,300 years ago. You want me to be excited that 3,330 something, I think 3,339, however many years ago, our great grandfathers were slaves in Egypt. And then God came and took them out of Egypt. How does that help me now today? Not just that it's a story of the past, it's a story of the past, but look what happened in the last 3,300 years. The majority of that time that we were slaves in Egypt, that since we left Egypt, were not years spent in freedom. They were not years living in liberty with our temple and the Holy Beis Hamikdash in Israel, under our own sovereignty, our own king, under our own freedom. The majority of those years were spent living under persecution. We were living in countries that were not our homeland. We were living under the rule, under the dictatorships, under the evil of one empire after another. If you look at Jewish history, it has not been the story of a nation of people. Our history is a story of slavery. So very, very nice. Thank you, God. You're so kind. You took us out of Egypt 1,300 years ago. As we say, thank you. I appreciate the favor. But then what happened? The miracle didn't last. The miracle didn't remain because not too long after, we ended up under the destruction with the Babylonians, and then under the Romans, and then the Spanish Inquisition, and then the Chamaniki operas, and then the pogrom Crusaders, and then the Holocaust, God forbid. So very nice that we were once. But the question's even stronger, says this young child. Not longer that didn't remain true. But look at us today. Look at us today. Are we free? Or are we in exile? Are we today living in freedom and in peace in our homeland, able to serve God in happiness? No. We're still in Gullus. The child turns to you by the Seder. He was in school, and they taught him this beautiful story of the Exodus. They taught about the splitting of the sea. They taught about God saved us. Says the young kid who's not afraid to ask the really difficult questions that adults don't ask. Says the young child, I don't understand. Why are we celebrating a story that happened that's not true anymore? We're back in slavery. Not only physical slavery, but emotional slavery, psychological slavery. We're living in exile. We're living under the control, under the influence is a better word, under the influence of all kinds of shtos, of all kinds of foreign influences. We're not living under the beauty of Torah in our own land, with our own government, etc. So what's the celebration? And that question is even stronger this year. I'm going to have this question. God, you saved us. God can do miracles. God has a strong hand and a outstretched arm. Where is it? Where is it? We're sitting and having a Pesach Seder in quarantine. Many Jews this year will be sitting all by themselves, and they're going to sit down to have a Pesach Seder to celebrate the freedom that God took us out of Egypt and say, where is the freedom now? I can't leave my home. I can't leave my home. I can't go spend Pesach with my grandchildren because I'm 75 years old or whatever it is, and I'm afraid to get sick, I'm afraid to go out of the home. I can't spend Pesach with my grandchildren. So what's the freedom? What's the big miracle? What's the big celebration? The question gets worse. The question gets stronger. He says to himself, I don't know why it's not showing me the comments, says this young boy at the Seder, what are you telling me? We have freedom. Have you looked around the Jewish community recently? Do you know how many poor people there are? I know. Listen to me. I'm speaking to a lot of people that are in a lot of kahak. Look at the table. We say in the words, whoever called dichvin, whoever is hungry, let him come and eat. Whoever is needy, come in us. My father, you're telling me to be happy that God saved us from Egypt. But look at how many poor people are. God is so amazing. God is so powerful. God mighty. So why are the people that lost their job in the last few weeks? Why are the people, I know after this class is over, that I don't say what she does. She's basically, she lives off clients and hasn't had a single client in a few weeks. So where's the miracle of Passover? Where's the miracle of a God that takes us out of Egypt? Let's talk about the 4 sons. Look who's sitting at the Seder table. First of all, you have these hungry people. You have these needy. It's not an invitation. He's saying, look, Daddy, how you brought home. Not on this Nebach, you brought on this guy who has nothing to eat and nothing to. We're doing a mitzvah. We brought him home. It's a beautiful thing. Baruch Hashem, she got a lot of reward in heaven for bringing him home. Beautiful. But why are there poor people? But then you ask, look, sitting at the table, yeah, there's a chacham sitting at the table. There's a wise boy sitting at the table. And look who else is at the table. 4 sons, right? There's a chacham. One is wise. He's into it. He did his homework. He has a Dvar Torah in each line of the Haggadah. But then there's a Rasha sitting there. You have the person sitting at the Seder who is only to argue. He's there to make fun and to mock the rituals. This is a guy who couldn't care less about Judaism. He's there just to fight. And then you have sitting next to him, next to this wicked son, is a simple son. I don't know. I don't say Joe, Bob, whatever. He's a nice guy, but he's a simpleton. He's never had a Jewish education. He doesn't know how to read Hebrew. He never goes to shul. He knows nothing. He comes here because it's free food. There's a good dinner. So he comes, he'll sit nicely, he'll twirl his thumbs, and hopefully he'll hold the this way and he'll hold it upside down, or whatever, and sneaking a look at his phone. And he thinks nobody's looking at it. Then you have the really simple son, doesn't even know that it's Pesach. Yeah, whatever. His mother forced him to come. So what's the celebration? Before we can even start the Manashtan, before we can even start to talk about a story of Exodus, this young child, or it could be us, who's anyone that's willing to ask the hard question, says, what are we celebrating? Didn't you tell us, didn't I learn in school, that the only people that left Egypt were the believers? It says that 4/5 of the Jews didn't make it out of Egypt. Only those that believed in God were able to leave Egypt. Those that did miracles, those who did Exodus, were redeemed. So he's saying that the non-believers make it only now. What happened to them now? Where of Exodus remained? Nothing. Not the freedom. We ended up in the concentration camps. We ended up in gas chambers, God forbid. We ended up fighting for our lives. A piece of land in Israel, fighting for 60, 70 years, and we're still fighting for our exist on the national world stage. It's a little piece of land that's ours. So freedom we don't have, the truest sense of the word. Liberty, emotional freedom, that we're not slaves to our boss, or slaves to our work, slaves to our insecurity, or slaves to our own emotional illnesses, we don't have. So what are we celebrating? Which part of the story came true? This paragraph is the answer to this chapter. The beginning of Maggid, the beginning of telling the story, is make the story real for me, for you, and for our children. Our children that are wondering where is God when there's a pandemic that's running across the universe and killing innocent people. When there's a pandemic that's putting hospitals and stopping families from being able to celebrate together. So God wants to know what's the deal. So we answer him, Hey, lama anya di achlu avasana. This is the poor man's bread, the bread of affliction that our fathers and our ancestors ate when they were in Egypt. However, we tell the child, yes, it's true, bread of affliction. Yes, it's true that we're not free yet, but you should. There's poor sitting at our table, but you should know, hashtahach. Now it's true that we're slaves. In the year to come, the year to come, we will be free. We'll be in our homeland. We'll be in the land of Israel. Now we are slaves to come. We'll be free people. What are we saying to our child? We're saying that the exodus from Egypt was not the end of the story. You know, leaving Egypt was not the destination. Leaving Egypt was the launch. Like a child being born, we're compared to the story of the exodus of Egypt is compared to the birth of a child. Us leaving Egypt was like a child being born. So yes, it's true that we're still slaves. While it's true that there's still Jews that are poor, that don't even care to know about it. It's all true. We're still in exile, and we suffer oppression, and there are still people that hate them. You should know that Pesach is the most amazing day, because on Pesach is when God created the potential of freedom. Pesach is the holiday in which God created the opportunity for us to break free. Meaning there was, until Pesach, we did not have the emotional ability to break our bondage. The opportunity didn't exist. We were mentally enslaved. We didn't know that we could break free. Pesach was a break in the window, so to say. In that Pesach gave us the opportunity to break out of our suffering. I share often this man came to a zoo. He sees that they have these massive elephants, huge elephants, that are chained down. And he is watching how in this particular zoo, wherever it is, the elephant will walk to the end of their rope and they'll stop and they will never go back. The elephant, he'll walk 2 more steps and the rope will break and he'll be free. The rope can't break an elephant giving a kick. He starts to explain to me, how do elephants not break free? So he tells him as follows. So he says, when the elephant born, the elephant starts to talk, it walks until the end of the rope, and what happens to the little elephant? It falls flat. It can't walk further. It walks the other way, it gets to the rope, what happens? It reaches the end of the rope, falls flat. This is on for several months, or several years, however it is, the elephant is young. And every single time the elephant walks to the end of the rope, it falls and hurts itself, falls on its face. So the elephant eventually learns that it cannot walk past the end of the rope. Even though now the elephant is already 5 tons. And now the elephant with one kick, where the rope will go flying far away. But the elephant has already been conditioned in its mind that it can walk past the rope. The Jews living in Egypt were mentally conditioned that they couldn't be free. They were mentally conditioned, psychologically conditioned, that we cannot transform who we are. We cannot change our identity. This is me, and I am me, and take it or leave it is not going to change. This explains the next paragraph. We tell our children, Avodim hayinu lepare b'Mitzrayim. Not Avodim haysa aviseinu b'Mitzrayim. Not that our grandfathers were slaves in Egypt, in a land called Egypt, a man called Pharaoh. No. Avodim hayinu. We, me, you. We were slaves. We were in our own limitations. The word Mitzrayim from the same Hebrew word Meitzar. Me and you and I myself, we have our own limitation. We have our own triggers. We have our own roadblocks. We have our own preconceived mental limitations that we think, the end of my road, this is as far as I can go, and I can't go further. We think so. It's in our minds that we can't go further than this. Comes the story, Pesach, and tells us, and we tell our children of the Seder, we tell ourselves at the Seder. We tell the child within ourselves that wants to grow. Avadim hayinu, it's true that we were slaves. However, the night of Pesach comes, Vayetzienu Hashem Eloheinu, God, our God, came, Vayetzienu, and He took me and you out of slavery. He took us out of our own Pharaoh, out of our own taskmaster, out of our own limitations, out of our own meitzar, out of our own pace experience, when we're able to break free from the suffering and the bondage. Indeed, Hare Anu, we, Ubaneinu, and our children and our grandchildren for all of time remain mishubadim. We would remain subjugated. We remain under the control of exile. Only because God came and He liberated us. He took us out of Egypt and He made us a free people. Therefore, are we able now to transform ourselves? Meaning, the Pesach Seder stories are real to us now. Not just for celebrating a Seder because 3,300 years ago, our forefathers left Egypt. So you are right. That story, the point why it's so important is because it's for us. True. Hashta. Now we're here. Now I anger management. Now I have my insecurity. Now I have my lack of patience. Now I have my inability to trust in God. I have my inability to truly love somebody else. I have all of my slavery. All of Pharaoh controlling me. Pharaoh was all of my addictions, all of my dependencies, all of my needs, all of my needs. But I'm not limited by them. I'm not confined by them. I'm enslaved by them. I'm not controlled by them. God came and created Exodus. And by God creating that Exodus then, God gave me the ability to experience Exodus now. God gave me the ability to freedom in my own personal slavery from what it is. I have more to say, but I wanted to stop for a moment and make this feel. As I'm saying, I'm thinking about something I'm not going to share on camera. Not feeling that vulnerable tonight. And I told someone that this is, we all have who we are. This is who I am. But a true statement that I said today. Today is not true. Although it's true that I am not enslaved to that character. I have the ability to break free from my own Egypt, my own Pharaoh, from my own taskmaster, from my own bondage. That's the story of Pesach. God gave us the ability to be free. What's so great that God took us out of Egypt? I'll ask you one more question. Before I ask you one more question. Do you remember the story of the covenant of the parts, where Abraham makes a treaty with God? He walks between the animals, and God turns to him, and God says, I'm giving you, Abraham, I'm giving you a choice. Either your children could be slaves in a foreign land, or go to a cleansing of a process, which even though they hadn't, what did the Jews need to cleanse? Done anything wrong? They weren't even a nation yet. The Jews have to atone for the states Adas, the tree of knowledge of Adam and Eve, and the Jews have a mission to do. They have an obligation to fix up this blemish in the world. And God says, I'm coming. And God says, I'm making with you a deal. Avram, you choose. And Avram chooses what? Avram chooses that the Jewish people be slaves in a land that's not theirs for 400 years. 400 years. And God promises Avram, I promise you that at the end of 400 years, I will your children out of Egypt. So if God did what God promised, and God took us out of Egypt the way God promised to take us out of Egypt, so what's the greatness? What's the great celebration? Oh, God is so gracious. God is so loving. God is so unbelievable. He actually did what he told Abraham he would do. Does that make sense? What's great about the fact that God created an Exodus? God had promised Abraham an Exodus. It's true that God had told Abraham children will be slaves for 400 years, and instead we only stayed in Egypt for 210 because he started counting from the day that Yitzchak was born. And therefore, the moment that Passover night happened, same night that Yitzchak was born, so the exact moment that 400 years from the birth of Avram's children until 400 years passed, God didn't wait 1 second to take us out of Egypt. And he took off 109 that really was actually living in the land of Egypt. It's a technical answer. I'm asking you a serious question, and it's very relevant. The answer is connected to what I was just saying before. Actually, the same thing I was saying before. What's the celebration? God took us out of Egypt. God promised to take us out of Egypt. It's not a miracle. The explanation is that when we took us out of Egypt, the great miracle was that we didn't take us out of Egypt. What we were meant to accomplish for those who were still slaves. After 400 years, when Moshe comes to the as guys, the time of redemption has arrived. Do you think the Jewish people were able to believe Moshe? In the beginning they did, and now you know what happened? They got scared from the oppression. They got bent out of shape from the masters and made them collect their own straw. And the Jewish people did not listen to Moshe. They could not Moshe because of their short spirit and the heartbreaking difficulty they had to do. And the Jews couldn't believe. The miracle of the Exodus was that the miracle of the Exodus was that the Jews were not deserving of liberation. The Jews had not finished fulfilling or their reason for which they were sent into Egypt. Which is why when God comes to take us out of Egypt, really he should have left us there. God told Abraham, there's a mission of purification that needs to be done in the universe in order for the world to become a better place from Adam and Eve. It's not fault, but the Jews need to fix it. And Abraham says, okay, they'll go to for a few years. Egypt for a few years. At the end of all that, what happened? We're still not ready for Exodus. So why does God? Nevertheless, even though, as far as the Midas Hadin means the act of judgment is concerned, we were not deserving of redemption, even though as far as the of justice, of judgment, of what we deserve, we don't deserve to be freed. Nevertheless, the great miracle of Pesach, to live as free, even though they haven't earned it. See, this is very, very important. This is exactly what we were saying before. You might think, who am I to change myself? Yes, Rabbi, I agree that theoretically a human being can have an exodus, and theoretically I believe that a Jew could transform his identity, become a better person. I accept the concept. But me, I'm something else. I'm a piece of work. I'm not changing. God's not going to save me. I am stuck. I'm not ready for liberation. I'm not ready for redemption. Nevertheless, this is what we're celebrating tonight by the Pesach Seder. And even though now we're slaves, even though hashtahacha, even now we're living in limitation, even though now we're avdin, God is giving us the ability to become L'shana Habib B'nei Chayrim. Next year we can be free people. This is not God that we see this example. I don't remember. I just was in my head. I don't remember who was. I didn't have a chance to look it up before. There's a top executive, I think from Microsoft. Yeah, if I would have time to Google the story, I would have found it. Because I saw it with a name, I don't remember. And he made a huge mistake, a huge error. It costed the company, again, I think it was Microsoft, but I may be wrong, several $million to fix. Meaning this mistake had repercussions that costed the company over $1 million, $2 million, huge sum over this executive that had made this mistake that had costed the company so much, came to the meeting with his letter of resignation. He knew he messed up big. He knew he made a big boo-boo, costed a lot of money. And he comes to the resignation to Bill Gates and says, I understand my mistake. Here is my letter of resignation. And Bill Gates looks at the letter, throws it back into his face. Are you crazy? I spent $2 million educating you. Now we're going to let you go. So profound. The mistake was the best $1 million, whatever it is, educating you. Now we should lose you. We think appropriate because I did this, because I ate that, because I went there, and I didn't just do it once or twice. I've done it for the last 40 years of my life. I'm stuck. I'm enslaved. This is who I am. I give in my letter of resignation and I consign myself to being a slave. Comes the Pesach night and says, Avadim hayinu leFaro Mitzrayim. Slave were we to Pharaoh in Egypt. We messed up, it's true. And it's cost to the company millions of dollars. It's cost to my soul, spiritual, agmas nefesh, a spiritual suffering of my soul. Terrible suffering. And yet, despite that, God came, God, our loving God, our God, Elokeinu, came and said, you think I'm going to abandon you just because you made some mistakes? I am going to create on Pesach the ability of liberation. I am going to create the ability for transformation, the ability to go from slaves, from limited people, unlimited to free people. And that is the introduction to the telling of the story. With that framework, in that context, now understand the story of the Exodus. God willing, tomorrow night we'll talk about the 4 Christians and the 4 kinds of people that are sitting at the table, etc., etc. Laila Tov. Hopefully, we should have only good news for all Jewish people. No sickness, no death, all health and happiness for every single one of us. Good night, my dear friends.